I got Mr. Jon Jeu on the show today from, I'm out here with Greenline Tactical and Silent Solutions. There's a whole mess of guys out here, and we're in Georgia, South Georgia, I guess, or Central.
Yeah, we're out here at Hampton Island.
Yeah, okay, Hampton Island. So on the map, for me, this is like all brand new territory. I've never been on the coastline down here. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, they like to call it the Low Country.
The Low Country, which means what I was taught last night, which means basically it's kind of like the marshland, kind of, flatter, I guess.
Yeah, the coastal area of Georgia.
Yeah, so... And it's got a different feel to it. One of those feels is it's been about 98 freaking degrees here with about 7,000% humidity.
I was about to say just a little humid.
Oh God, I'm not built for this. I don't think. Like, it's. And what I'm told is we haven't even gotten there yet. Like it's still early in the year for it to be this hot. So
you got to hit it. You got to hit it about August, where it's about 99.9% humidity.
It's thick. You can eat it.
Yeah, you're breathing water.
Knife and fork.
That's right. That's right.
Well, let's get into. I mean, we're down here having a great time. I'm always just super enthusiastic about sitting down with cool, interesting people, and I come to these things for that. Like,
absolutely,
just to talk to the folks. And one of the cool things we're doing is we're riding around on helicopters and shooting shit out of those things, and that's been real fun.
Doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah. So, but I got an opportunity to sit down with you before we're going to be taking our night flight that's coming up. With the nods and all that stuff. So I have a little bit of time with you. I wanted to steal you away for a few and get to know you a little bit better in kind of this format, because it's been there's been a lot happening over the last, say, 24 hours.
It's a whirlwind.
36 hours now or something like that. Yeah, it's literally it's moving fast. So let's get started, man. Tell me. Let's on the walkovers. Like, I don't want to ask you too many questions before we get here, because I want to hear it, kind of raw and organic now.
Sure.
Well, you can kind of start wherever you want and finish wherever you want. I'll probably cut you off a few times to check in.
So I'm from North Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm a third generation Chinese-born American. My mom and dad met and going in high school and popped me out pretty early in the 70s. And then my dad became a police officer. They separated pretty early in my childhood, and my dad was a cop there locally. My mom kind of had a rocky past, and so she kind of exited a little bit out of my early childhood. So grew up with my grandparents there locally. They were very involved in the community. My dad was involved, with the police department and everything. He was one of the founding members of their SWAT team there locally. So my grandfather, my uncle, my dad were all heavily involved in firearms and really into the competitive shooting and outdoors and stuff like that. So as I was growing up, I really migrated toward that. We went to the range often, things like that. Dad was on SWAT. I would go shoot with them pretty regular throughout pistol, rifle, shotgunning, hunting, fishing, just a typical Southern upbringing for a Chinese kid growing up in the South, if you can imagine what that's like.
Well, I'm going to ask you about it. You're not getting out of this room without me asking about growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, with that kind of a background. And let's talk about that. Like, was that, so you're first, born here, correct?
So I'm the third generation born in the States.
Oh, born here. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, third generation born in the States.
Okay, all right. So there had been some experience there, but I wonder how that was for you growing up.
So my father was the first one to marry a white woman in my family. And they actually didn't speak to my mother until I was actually born. Like, it was like a weird thing to marry outside of our race. And it was like a real big thing. And my mother was kind of like shunned a little bit inside my father's side of the family.
Wow.
And really didn't talk to her very much until I popped out. But it's a very patriarchal type organization in a Chinese family. So I was the first son of the first son of the first son. So it was a big deal when I was born. So I was kind of, it was a exalted position for her. It's like, oh crap, you brought the first. Yeah, that's right. Boy. Right. Gotcha. So
how was that growing up? I mean, I don't know. The word's not normal. I don't know what it is, but like, how was that growing up there?
So obviously, there's not a high population of Asians running around Central Arkansas. So it was either family members, or obviously the Asian culture was pretty small. So it was, we knew each other. So, pretty tight-knit, small community.
And speaking of culture, just sort of culture, traditions, things like that, were those being practiced or exercised in the house, or were you being exposed to that at all?
Very little. My grandparents still spoke Cantonese, but we were very inundated with being American, right? So, like, again, the Second Amendment, like, was a big thing. Like, guns were a major part of our upbringing, Yeah, I don't know if it's so much being in the South, but I mean, my great-grandfather actually immigrated to Arkansas City, which, if you look at that up on the map, it's in the southern Mississippi Delta of Arkansas. It's like way down in the South, like the cotton picking and farming in the middle of the Mississippi Delta. And man, I mean, you can't get any more Southern than that, right? And so I don't know if it was more Southern tradition but I mean, we rapidly accepted that Southern culture. And I can remember growing up, like, when I think of comfort food, I think of biscuits and gravy, and it's just old South cooking. But I also think of traditional Chinese dishes too. So it's kind of one of those weird mixtures.
That's cool. That's what I wanted to ask, because it's not a part of the country I've spent very much time in at all, and there's a lot of. I mean, most of my life's been spent out on the West Coast, or all of it really. I've traveled a lot for work and experienced all kinds of things. But when I come, like even here, or I've been into like very South Georgia and been there for multi-day trips and things like that, it's got a different vibe. It's got a different vibe. It's awesome.
I've had a chance to travel pretty extensively. I love the South, man. Yeah. I think the people are the most courteous that you're gonna meet.
I'm not gonna argue with you on that. I'm not gonna argue on that with that at all. So, okay, so you're going up, you're hunting, fishing, shooting. I mean, we're going to get to the gun stuff here, but
sure.
So you go. Let's talk. We're getting through your childhood here.
Yeah. So my dad's on SWAT, and one of the things I respected about my dad, like I said, my mom and dad got divorced pretty early. My dad never left me behind. So he's working shift work. Obviously, as a single father, he really can't take care of me while he's out working shift work at night. So I'm living with my grandparents. They own a restaurant. My grandfather's a master pipe fitter, so he's working on different construction sites, running a restaurant and doing all this stuff.
Wow.
And so I would stay with my grandparents, but also my father was always there, in the interim. I can remember times of him taking me to training events with him and his SWAT team as early as 10 and 11 years old. So when he would go train, I would go train and literally be on the line shooting with his team, working the fire. When they would go rappel out of the fire tower and stuff like that, I'd be rappelling alongside with them.
Oh, cool.
I don't know how he got approval to do that, but I can remember being the only kid there and doing it like nonstop. And I guess one of the things I'd like to highlight is that I got brought up around exceptional men, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, that was just normal to you?
They were normal, just like, I think I mentioned this to you on the walk over here. We'd go to the range and shoot. My dad was a competitive shooter. He shot the police Olympics. So NRA runs a police division, and they would shoot. Back then it was the revolver divisions. And there's a fairly famous ATF agent. His name is Bill Buford. He was a special agent in charge of the Little Rock field office. Okay. He was one of the agents that was involved in the raid at Waco. I grew up shooting competitively right beside Bill and my dad, so he was just Uncle Bill. And I can remember the day the raid at Waco, my dad calling me and goes, "Hey, you need to go up to Baptist Memorial Hospital, which is located there in North Little Rock, and check on Bill. He's been shot."
Wow.
And Bill lived there in North Little Rock locally, and I can remember going and visiting him in the hospital, the day just prior to that raid. The guy, it's a fairly famous photo. Bill's laying across the hood of a vehicle, and they're driving him down the driveway, and the guy running next to him is another man that I grew up with, and his name is Ken Chisholm. Ken was another North Little Rock police officer that was on the SWAT team that I'd grown up with.
Okay.
He ended up going to the ATF. We're still in contact as of this day. And he, again, is one of the most highly decorated ATF agents.
I remember that footage.
That photo. I mean, you actually see Bill getting shot through the roof of the compound and him falling down the ladder as that raid happened. But so Ken's in that photo too. But again, to me, growing up, that's just Uncle Ken. You know, these exceptional men that are willing to go out there and put their life on the line and do things for their community. You know, is just who I grew up with. And so it was kind of, I didn't realize that till later on in life that's who I was being mentored by growing up as a kid, you know?
So what did that mean? So there's a lot to that. Where does this lead? I mean, does this lead to you wanting to be police officer or a federal agent?
Absolutely. I think
I would assume so.
I think my dad was always my hero.
Yeah.
He passed away early. So I got to work with him briefly. I joined the North Little Rock Police Department. I was 21 and 2 months or 3 months old when I got hired on by the North Little Rock Police Department.
Just a kid, man.
Oh, yeah. Barely wet behind the ears. Started my policing career. Dropped out of college because I couldn't wait to be a cop. You know, I was pursuing that so diligently. Started my policing career. He was still working there at the time, so we got to police together for about 2 to 3 years before he retired. And then he moved on to a federal agent job working for the Department of Veterans Affairs, doing some things for them.
Okay.
He actually started their program to get all of their police officers armed. So he wrote their arming program. He's got a range dedicated to him in North Little Rock at their federal training facility.
Wow.
So that kind of happened. I started my career there, did patrol. I ended up getting on to SWAT. I was the first second-generation SWAT officer at that department. Ended up getting into narcotics, working there undercover for a while. And then things start changing in your life. And left policing in about 2000, the war, let me back up a little bit. The war on terror kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
I deployed in 2003. I was a traditional guardsman.
Okay.
I joined the Guard in 1992, so I was an infantryman.
Mm-hmm.
Traditional, going 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks during the summer, doing my traditional kind of stuff.
So Iraq kicked off.
Yeah. And then I'd become a MP during that time frame also as a secondary MOS. It kind of matched up with my my career path.
Mm-hmm.
I was a Soldier of the Year for the state of Arkansas in 1995. So
is that right?
I caught a little attention, and then they wanted me to come up to the brigade headquarters as an MP where they had an MP detachment. So I'm like, okay, sure. A little bit closer to home where I was at. So I did that. My father got sick. And so, and I was in narcotics at that time frame. So I kind of had a break from the Guard.
Okay.
And, I've had long hair, the mustache, goatee. I looked like a rabid Mexican. It was pretty bad. And he ended up passing away in 1998 of cancer. So he was 45 years old.
Wow, still a young man.
Yeah. So it was a really weird time in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So,
I can imagine. I mean, you're still a young man man at that point. So, okay, so you get deployed. And so Dad gets sick while you're.
So I'm still a traditional guardsman. Dad gets sick. He dies.
Okay.
I've got a 12-year-old brother, 8-year-old sister at that point.
Oh, wow.
So I'm kind of filling this brother but dad role also for them,
Wow.
I'm still working at the police department as a guardsman. I end up changing agencies during that time frame. I also went to the VA for a brief time period. The war on terror kicks off, and I deploy in 2003. We start training in 2003, deploy in 2004. I was gone for about total that deployment train up lasted about 18 months.
Yeah.
So
I knew a lot of guys that went through that and on the back end, and they joined to be part of the thing one weekend a month, and the next thing you know, they were gone from their families for more than 18 months in a lot of cases.
Oh, yeah.
People were out over there for years or coming back and going right back out again.
Yeah, the Guard changed from a reserve force to an operational force during that time frame. And when I came back, unfortunately, I was going through a nasty divorce. She didn't really appreciate the fact that I was gone. And
that's tough, man.
When I left, she considered it a divorce, and she moved on with her life, unfortunately, while I was deployed, and I came back to a nasty divorce.
Having to deal with that.
And fighting for custody of my kids and stuff like that. So it was pretty ugly.
So going back to those buddies that I have, there was guys that worked for me actually for a while, and there were 5 of them, and I think 3 of them went through that very same thing. It's just, which doesn't get talked about, very often, and they were ugly. And, it was just hard. They didn't see it coming. And then there was the picking up all the pieces after that. So
you're in a weird headspace too, because you go from a place where you're doing some things that are you've changed your moral compass. You've been over this place where you're doing things that you don't normally do in your life. Mm-hmm. Your duty has asked you to do some things that are outside the norm. And so you've been doing this stuff, and then you come back home. And all of a sudden you're faced with these other problems, and you've been used to solving them a certain way over here. Mm-hmm. That's no longer socially acceptable. And you got to pump the brakes and be like, oh, whoa, I can't respond out of anger, and I have to adjust. And man, it was pretty tough to sometimes put yourself in check.
I can't imagine, honestly. I can't. I wonder how, just kind of going through that and the experiences that you got there, negative and all the things that kind of come along with that, how that shows up for you later in terms of how you deal with things and get through challenges.
I tell you, I think I got lucky. Honestly. I was very, very, very angry. Mm-hmm. And I had to find a positive output for my anger. Mm-hmm. And man, it was jiu-jitsu, and it was the gym. Yeah. And she had ruined me financially. Right. My budget was low as hell, and I bought a gym membership, and I would just go and just wear myself out to where I had nothing left, and I would just come home and crash. Mm-hmm. I had to find a healthy outlet for it, and I knew I couldn't take it out on anything else. So I just go beat the crap out of a heavy bag, or find a buddy to choke, or do something else. But I would just wear myself out physically till I had nothing left.
Was there any shooting during that time? Did you do any of that?
No, I
see a lot of guys.
I wasn't shooting. Unfortunately, I really wish I would have had the assets to be able to do it. I find shooting very spiritual. I get a lot of release after I get so focused, and I can dismiss a lot of exterior influence and get. It's very almost zen-like. When I'm done shooting, I feel very I know the feeling. Relaxed. You know. But no, I didn't have the resources to even pay for ammo or do any of that stuff. So it was like I had to have some type of physical outlet, and it was punching and kicking and rolling around there, snuggling dudes.
There's something very therapeutic about it.
There is,
Physically, it's good, but mentally, it's also very good. I think because of the physical part that it, again, it just wear you out.
Yeah. I had to find something.
Doesn't leave a lot of room left to think about other stuff or have to worry about other stuff. Okay, so there's more guard stuff here, because ultimately this becomes the career path for you.
Yeah, so I'm going through this nasty divorce. I come back to police work, and there's politics everywhere. They're a little angry at me because I've been gone. Hurricane Katrina kicks off right as we come back. And guess what? As soon as I come back, the Guard's pulling me back in, right? So my brigade had only been back a few short months. We got back in April. Hurricane Katrina hits in September. They immediately pull us all back in and send us down to Louisiana.
Oh, man.
And Mississippi. And, my job didn't like that very much. I'm going through this nasty divorce, so they shift my days off. And I was getting to see my daughter at the time every other weekend, and they shift my days off that weekend. The ex is not working with me to see my daughter whatsoever. And I'm like,
what am I?
You're killing me.
Yeah.
So I go, as a reasonable man would, you should go talk to your bosses, explain the situation. They didn't want to hear it. So I had some friends in the Guard, some higher echelon officers I went to talk to, and they put me on orders for 30 days. I'm like, you just come over here, work for me for 30 days, see if they work this thing out. So I went on and worked for them for 30 days. Every 30 days, I go back and talk to my bosses and ask if they would change my days off. If they wouldn't change my days off, I'd hand them another 30 days worth of orders, and then I would leave. They just chaff their hide, man.
Solid plan.
Oh yeah,
well played.
Yeah, so I did that for about 8 months.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
You got that far down the road.
Oh yeah, I did that in about 8 months. During that time frame, there were several full-time positions coming open in the Guard. So I was told to apply.
Yep.
So I applied, and I got picked up for an active duty job for the Guard. So I went in and resigned as my position, went back on active duty. So, and that's about 2006.
Okay. And that brings us to well, there's a lot more in this, but you've been doing that since.
Yeah.
Until basically a year ago, right?
So I went back on active duty, and then I retired out in, May of 2023.
Yeah. So
yeah, man.
It's barely been a year. Yeah, just over a year.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the career. Let's talk about what you're doing there. So what was the job? What was the full-time job that you took on?
So in the Guard, they have active duty positions of readiness NCO, training NCO, supply NCOs. They do all the full-time work at the unit during the month for the guys that come in for the weekend and for the 2 weeks during the summer, right? Yep. So they do all the administrative training, all the other stuff. So I started off doing a readiness NCO job. Ended up moving up into operations, which is all the training and budgeting and stuff like that. Did operations for a while. Did that at the company and battalion level. Ended up, my last assignment was with the National Guard Marksmanship Training Unit, which is like the sister unit to the Army Marksmanship Unit.
Yeah, I didn't know that one well.
Yeah, so I worked down there as my last assignment for.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, man.
How long were you there for?
18 to 23, so 5 years-ish.
Wow, that's a good run.
Yeah, man.
Talk about that.
So,
did you guys get to travel a bunch?
I got to travel. I was part of the...
this is a full-time deal.
Full-time deal.
That's
full-time
awesome.
deal. So I was operations sergeant there. Helped run and administer competitions, both nationally, internationally.
Yeah.
So helped work some of the programs inside that. Helped develop some of the night programs and instruction, stuff like that. And that's how I came in contact with Don.
Yep.
Worked with the International Combat Team, which is that's part of the competitions team that uses rack grade weapons, just so you're like your standard M4 or at the time M9 and M17. And then we go and compete against other foreign armies at different places around the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great time.
Man, it's a good time. You get to travel, meet really interesting people.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're part of a team that's got a purpose, and you're not standing around waiting for something else.
What I really liked about it is that you're using standard equipment. It's not something special. It's it's what you get out of every armory. It's not a special rifle. It's not a special pistol. It's the rack grade stuff everybody's got, and that's what you're competing with.
Did you guys recruit inside the Guard, or did you go out and get shooters from outside?
No, it's recruited from all the 54, all the states and territories. We recruit some of the top shooters in the nation, are part of the All Guard team, and then we go around and we do fairly well.
How fun!
Oh yeah.
That sounds great. I mean, guy I've had on the show just on his way out of the AMU, actually, Scott Peterson. I don't know if you know who Scott is.
I don't know. I don't think I've met Scott.
He was there for quite some time, and I think that whole transition of him, kind of the replacements coming in, and he's just on kind of those finals. I think he's supposed to be done in August or something like that. But he's real into the distance game,
right.
Yeah, specifically, and he's been teaching some classes. His handle's Veracity Solutions on Instagram, but
I'll have to check him out.
Yeah, he's coming up, but he was that guy, you know.
Yeah.
And I got to talk to him quite a bit about that job. I had no idea that it even existed really until a couple of years ago, and then he kind of walked me through kind of what it was about, how they train people. I got to see this last a couple of months ago. I was actually here in Georgia. I got to see an NRL match with the AMU team was down there. So cool. Well, I mean, what a cool job. Crazy. Yeah, what a cool job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what a cool job. So, all right. So so that brings us to here, because you're just retired out of there. And I caught last night, or maybe it was earlier today, I don't know. Again, it's been a whirlwind. It's all running together. That you're getting back into law enforcement. You've just kind of returned back to it.
Yeah,
Can we talk about that?
It's super crazy. So I retired out, and Don approached me. He's like, "Hey man," he goes, "Yeah, you need to think about coming working with me a little bit." So I'm like, "Okay." Like, yeah, this is right up my alley. So I'm like, I'm going to start my own little company, Contingency Tactical.
Okay.
So that's my firearms company. So I'm working with Don. I'm doing that. And I'm like, it's keeping me somewhat busy, but this is the first time in my life that I haven't been in service to my community.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of weird, but that's kind of part of my identity as a man, I think, is like I need to be of service.
Be giving back, yeah.
And so I struggled with that for a while.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, all right, I think I'm going to, my local sheriff's office has a reserve sheriff's unit.
Okay.
So went in there, and so I'm back on the road, man.
I love
20
it.
years later.
I love it. I love it, especially with the exit and the kind of, it seems like the right thing, man.
Yeah.
Getting back in on your terms, and doing the things that you want to do for the reasons you want to do them.
Absolutely.
And you're getting to work with your friends at the same time. It sounds like a really great setup.
And I think it's a good fit right now too, because I want to bring something back to the agency too. So maybe I can help them with some training and
like what? So let's talk about that. Like what do you hope to do?
So I am, again, I think I've been very lucky in my career, and I've been exposed to some really high level people like Don and Chris Sizelove and some other folks. I've got to train with some pretty high level dudes, and I would like to bring some of that experience back to the sheriff's office, and some of the guys locally. Maybe I can help bring their game up a little bit.
I love that. Have those discussions happened yet, or are you just kind of you're working them? You're greasing the wheels.
I'm easing in there.
Yeah. I wonder how it'll be accepted. Because it seems to me, when I talk to people that train a lot, so they're obviously going to be very biased, but that you can never have too much training. Right?
Well, you got to have a student that's willing to learn.
That's the bigger part. So I wonder I wonder how we'll have to do this podcast again in a year and see where we're at. Man. But I wonder about just kind of how do you do that differently? Coming at it from your background now and coming back into it, what will guys want? What will they accept?
I think the burden's on me on how I'm going to present it.
That's what I mean.
I got to come in there with a soft ego. I can't come in there like gangbusters. So,
well, let's talk about kind of what you're doing with like Don and the upstart of your new company. Like, what are the things that you're learning like right now about all of that?
Oh man, so there's an ego in the industry, right? So
really,
yeah. So I'm a neophyte in the industry. I'm not a known quantity out there. I don't have the super credentials of being some SF guy or something like that. I've got a little bit of law enforcement credentials and some things like that. But I think. I listened to your podcast with Mike Pannone, and Mike said something that kind of rang home to me, talking about Mark Smith. It's like, you don't have to have super duper credentials as long as you're coming at it from your point of view and your experience, and you're presenting good material, and that you can relay your concepts clearly, and you can teach, like get a student to receive your message and understand what you're trying to relay.
How to do the thing.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to focus on, is just being able to relay what I'm trying to get across and bring somebody's skill level up.
Well, John, that is a very mature professional response. And going back to the whole ego part and things like you were kind of listening to how I kind of got into this. Chris, you just mentioned, who we're going to have on the show, was kind of asking a little bit about how I got here. And it was searching for exactly what you just said. And the interesting part it wasn't impossible to find, but it wasn't exactly easy because there was a lot of noise and there's a lot of stuff that you had to wade through. And I think a lot of people getting into the business and by the way, so this was like during 2020, 2021, when it seemed like it reminded me of the 90s, the late 90s, when everybody was becoming a personal trainer, because I came from the fitness background. Like everybody's going to get a personal trainer certification because, I can train good. So I should be able to teach people this. People are asking me how to do it when they see me in the gym because maybe I've had some success or whatever else. So why don't I just get a certification and then people can pay me to do this, and then I should be paid because I have a certification now. But it didn't come from the what you just said. There's like, I want to help people, and I feel good when I do that, and there's a purpose and I have a drive, or sometimes like an obsession to do it. Sometimes that's to a fault, but coming back at it with that kind of an attitude, I think that's really what the industry needs. And I think a lot of people, it's sort of in the long run on the larger scale, there's been so many people that have kind of come in and come out, right? Because, and for whatever the reasons were for coming in and coming out, they touched people along the way. Some of those were good touches, and some of them were they were awful touches. And it gets talked a lot about kind of in social media and things like that. But I think what happens with all those touches that happen that were not good, somebody has to go in there and clean that up for them, or at least attempt to. And it's not going to be like, oh, you got taught wrong. Let me show you how to do it better, or whatever.
Sure.
It's, I'm sorry you had that experience. Like, let me find out what you do know, and let's work to try to make this thing better. And that sounds maybe a little corny. When we're talking about firearms instruction, again, the ego, and there's a lot of testosterone that kind of comes, that revolves around it. But that's what I think.
I think it also goes off your instructor's motivation.
That's what I mean. 100%.
So it's either going to be,
what's the intention?
Why is your instructor motivated to teach? Is it because he wants to earn money? Is it because he wants to see you get better? I think that's the most rewarding thing, is watching. Like, I teach a ladies only class, right? So I taught one down in Miami, Florida. I've got this city administrator come in. She is very standoffish about firearms, doesn't really understand them. She doesn't know if she really wants to carry a pistol.
She's fearful. Yeah,
and she doesn't. And so day one, she's just like, I don't really know. I'm here because my friend really forced me to come down here. I told her I would come. So we go through the class. By the end of day 2, she's on the phone with her husband going, hey, you're going to buy me a SIG P365 with a red dot on it, and we're getting this kind of holster. And she's telling me how great it is and how empowered she feels.
It's awesome.
That's what's rewarding to me, is taking somebody from not being fearful and not understanding to being, oh, yes, I can use this and I understand how to defend myself and take care of myself. That's rewarding to me. That's better than money to me, knowing that she's leaving there feeling that much better about herself. So
I get that. You've empowered somebody, right? To become more capable. They had it in there all the time. You were just laying down the breadcrumb trail for them to arrive to whatever place that they arrived. And I agree with you, man. I don't think there's a better paycheck than that. Now, at the same time, if you're trying to make a living doing this, there is a business end of it. But the interesting part is, I've always found that people that do a really good job with what you just mentioned, the business thing isn't really that hard, because it just kind of comes naturally. They fumble a little bit and they could be doing things better, but it's
kind of funny. Like, Don and I've had this conversation. Like, right now, the firearm industry is kind of in a downturn. I think it's economy based. I think most of the instructors that we talk to, everybody's kind of struggling with numbers. And I'm talking to several of them, and I'm like, hey, man, I feel like I'm drowning right now. I feel like I'm doing everything I can to pump the numbers and like market and get people engagement and like trying to get people in my classes and stuff like that. And they're like, you're doing a great job, but I don't feel like I am. So maybe I just have to enjoy what I am doing and let it work itself out in the end. Keep putting myself in there and let the customers do what they do. And I'll worry about that later on, let it build itself, just keep investing in people.
God, that's so
and
important.
Let it happen. You know what I mean?
I do. That is so important. And because whatever the reasons are that, again, there's a little bit of a downturn in the economy of firearms training, just parts, guns, all that stuff. Yeah. Sure. Look, I'm in the service business and I'm feeling it too. And it's totally different and I think it's the exact same reasons. It doesn't cost you more or less to care. Yeah. The same.
And give that person your all. You know what I mean? Invest in that person hopefully it comes back to you. You know what I mean?
There's that, and then I think you have to be really careful, and this is kind of what you see. Is you see people doing kind of some interesting things, like trying to make adjustments or overcorrect to try and correct a problem that they might not have a lot of control over. Like you can't control somebody else's pocketbook or what they have in their bank account or what their discretionary income is. So again, what I mean by the interesting behaviors, I think, is they'll do interesting things with trying to teach different classes or almost try to reinvent the wheel. When the reality of it is that's not it, man. That's not what it is. Like,
don't create a sideshow just to sell a ticket.
Yeah. So like I think, well, this is actually a good example. So it's like we're here, and what we're doing here today is very different. It's an experience, right?
It is.
But this isn't for everybody. Don knows that, right? You know that. Like this isn't for everybody. Not everybody's going to, number one, want to. Not everybody can. Not everybody can afford it. But those that can, will come and do the thing. But this isn't like that's not the bread and butter, right?
No.
The bread and butter is going to be that lady you just told me about.
That's
and
right.
There are so many people out there, and I say this a lot, like more people need to spend more time talking to her, right? In the way that you just, in helping them in the way that you just mentioned you helped her, right? That there's not a lot of that. It's still I still see, from an outward advertisement, like social media, that's all it is. That's
sure.
It's an advertisement, either for you personally, your brand, whatever else. But that's what you're doing. You're putting out the highlight reel at a lot of levels, and you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and get people to look at you. That's what it is. So when I sift through there and I'm going through that, like I still don't see those messages coming up, and about like that story you just told. Like, why not? Why are we not talking about that stuff more? Why is it? Because it's not sexy, it doesn't get attention and whatever else. Yet there's so much, I'm putting this out there from the business perspective. There's so much pie, and there's dollars there if you're trying to make a living.
So I think we've said this to each other several times this weekend, is like the philosophy of let's support one another.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if I know that you're doing something that is good and somebody's needing something and you're doing it, I'm going to tell them to go see Scott.
Yeah.
Because Scott's doing a great job doing this. Go see Scott.
Right.
And if you know that I'm doing something that she needs, go see John.
Yeah. Return the favor.
Hey, it doesn't hurt either one of us for doing that.
No.
Matter of fact, we take care of one another. There's plenty out there.
It shows up for me every time when I come to something like this, because I see the connection points and how people are being supported. I mean, the way I got connected with Don and Sam, for that matter, was through another amazing instructor who is referring people to other people's businesses.
Yeah.
That's how I learned about him. Or Sam was a little bit different. I learned about Don a little differently, not at the same time. I kind of found Sam on Instagram.
He's hard to miss.
Yeah, it's like, why is this guy so angry all the time? But no, it was like the night vision thing. That popped up, and then Don came up a little bit later. But the point. I think the point of it is there could be a lot more of that, and I actually think you're starting to see that. You're starting to see instructors like you guys collaborating more. So I had this conversation with Don this year at SHOT Show. I finally got him on the podcast. We were supposed to do this time last year, and it didn't happen. And so I finally got him on, and we were talking about this. And I think his business is unique in that he can pull guys like you in, like Sam in, like Chris in, like all these people can come together, and they're working together as a group on these different projects or in different things. They can call one another and depend on one another if they need it. Like Duffy's another guy,
Absolutely.
He'll show up for Don anytime he needs him to. And he's been doing that for a long time.
Yes.
Right. And so what you're seeing other instructors out there now trying to collab, is the word, where they'll go teach, a course together, a pistol course or whatever, so that the students get a little bit.
And it's fun. You get to hang out with your bro.
Yeah. It's
Why
fun.
not?
It's fun. So before it was like, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Now you're starting to see a little bit of a different attitude and approach to, maybe I should be marketing this thing a little bit differently. How can I reach out there to help somebody? And in some cases, those things have worked out really well. In other cases, I think it's better for one of those dudes than it is for the other one. So go back to intention.
Sure.
I think that's something for the buyer to be aware of, as they're kind of looking out there, like what's really going on. Because I've seen a couple of those things go bad, actually. Yeah, people coming out the back end. But the back end of that, not, let's just say being sorry they did it. But my I guess my point in saying all that is I say all this to say is, Mike had brought up Mark, and you brought up Mark from JBS. He's starting to do that too, or he's been doing that for a long time.
I know him and Bill Blowers have done stuff together.
Right.
It's like, it's great stuff, man.
Right. And,
why not?
And like, I don't know Bill, but I do know, but I do know Mark, and I know him pretty well. I think I know him well enough to say this. One of the things that Mark has nailed is his connection with his people. Like, I've been around a lot of instructors, gone to a lot of classes. I had the good fortune of spending multiple days with Mark on end doing different things, training with him as a student, but also training alongside him as we were both students in a few different situations. And this is the takeaway, I think, and that is he cares so much about making sure that student or customer or even the person he's just talking to, having lunch with, or on the range, he's a fellow student, gets value from the time that he spends with them. Like, if we're going to have a conversation, man, let's have a conversation. And while a lot of this business can be very transactional, right? You come to me, you take a class, you pay me, hopefully you leave with some stuff. He's managed to do that much differently. And I think he connects with people ahead of time. He connects with people like in person, very personally. And then from there. And I think part of the reason, going back to what like Mike was saying about him, I think part of the reason he's been successful as he is because he doesn't come from like an institution, like you mentioned, coming up through the police department, or like your dad and him coming up through the police department, and the training like you're now trying to bring back to the police department. He doesn't have any of that to work to even think about. He
was a plumber, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He was a plumber. So he's just applying. He's not reaching back or stifled by any of that, I think. And we're starting to see a little bit of, I think what I've seen is a little bit of a change there, but it still has so long to go, which excites me. Like, I'm going, look at this dude. He's at the end of a military career. I think we're about the same age, right? You're jumping back into it. Look, you got your whole life left in front of you still. Like, what's the hurry to get to the end? We could still be giving back and getting so much done.
It is somewhat freeing to have a retirement at this age and be like, okay, now what do you want to do?
What next? Yeah.
What do you want to do?
Right.
Not what do you have to do, but what do you want to do? And like be, at that point where I can decide what I'd like to spend my time doing.
Yeah. How does that feel?
So,
I mean,
dude,
let me ask the question.
It's a little bit liberating. You know what I'm saying? Like is
it scary?
It's a little scary, but it's also, it's a little exciting too. At the same time, it's like I get to invest time and effort into things I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And so it's I get to take off in the middle of the week and go halfway across the country to, fly around in helicopters and shoot shit.
It's funny. Yeah, actually, it's kind of a cool compare and contrast because, we went through the safety brief and everything kind of yesterday, and you go through it every time. But people are like, hey, so you nervous? I'm like, dude, I'm not nervous at all. Like, and I'm excited, but I'm not overly excited. Like, man, I'm just happy to I'm just taking it all in, like I'm not, you get on there, I think I had to probably smile from ear to ear, and somebody probably got some cheesy pictures of me.
When he pulls pitch and you leave the ground, everybody's like,
there may have been a few different emotions you'll see on my face during that time. Like, oh shit, well, all the new sensations of the wind blowing in your face and scooching around on the seat and everything up front, or on the side. But
so was that your first flight?
My first time. Never been in a helicopter before. Yeah.
So what do you think?
It was amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good time. In debriefing and kind of going through my head, because it's been moving so fast, and we transitioned over here. This is the first time I really had time to kind of think and talk at the same time. But what was interesting to me, and I just mentioned it, was like all the new sensations you're getting all at the same time. Okay, so I'm sitting outside a helicopter, right, which is
new,
wild, right? There's the winds blowing, the temperature change, right? There's the helicopter's pitching in different directions. You got a gun hanging between your legs, where you got a dude sitting next to you who you're trying to pay attention to, right? Because he's going to be because we don't have communication with them. They do with one another, and the guys on the other side. But so you're watching for hand signals. I'm also like, did I fuck up? Did I leave something, behind?
Don't drop anything.
Do I have everything?
Anything.
There's so much going on, and so what I've learned over time is like just roll with it, man.
Yeah, take a deep breath and be like,
yeah, because nobody wins at helicopter shooting today, right?
That's right.
We're not going to go out there, just go have a good time. Try to enjoy it. Try not to overthink this and try and have fun. But also remember, there's things that you need to remember. And if I'm trying to remember all that other stuff, that stuff gets really confusing for me. So, dude, I had a great time. I got out there, like, people were like, do you have enough ammo? Do you have enough mags? Like, dude, I'm taking 7 mags. If I go through 7 mags in my 10-minute flight or whatever it is today, so be it. I get a cool helicopter ride out of it, at the end. So, like, you asking me the question, it was so much fun just to have that whole experience happening. So people are like, yo, what's it like on a helicopter? Well, where do I start? Like, what's it like shooting for? Where do I start with that? Like, there's so many things to, when Paul landed that thing yesterday, I'm like, I need 5 minutes with this dude. I got to know about this guy, right? Not only because I'm putting my life in his hands, just flying around, but this dude's like, he's got it to get, there's got to be some interesting stuff here.
He's got some interesting stories too, buddy.
So like, that's another sensation. Like, I am sitting on the edge of a helicopter about to, go have some fun.
Well, you're also experiencing something that very few dudes, even in the military, have ever done.
Which is my whole thing. So, like, I don't have any other expectation than having a great time. But yeah, Paul's got 20,000 hours, 20,000 flying hours. I'm like, where could you, I'm not trying to overthink this. So I'm just going to have a great time. Right.
Absolutely.
So it's been like, I'm stuttering. I probably sound like a stupid kid right now, but yeah, it was fantastic time. And, I highly recommend anybody.
Well, just wait till we turn the lights out.
Yeah.
It's going to be even more fun.
Which is going to be soon. And we got to get out of here in a few in order to do that as the sun goes down. But man, just in terms of, I had asked you, is like, you said it's liberating, being at this point in your life and being able to kind of make some different decisions and kind of a next chapter, turn the page, write your own book, however you want to write the next chapter yourself.
A little terrifying, and it's like the unknown is kind of a weird place, but.
I get that, but I think about this too, and something you said there is that Don had reached out to say, maybe come work with me a little bit. And that speaks to what all the things that we were saying.
Man, that's who Don, if I were to say one thing is, and I've talked to a bunch of guys in the industry that know Don Edwards. I've never met anybody that said anything negative about him.
I haven't either.
He is that guy. He is genuinely somebody that is looking to lift somebody up. And a guy who encourages people. And I'm forever grateful for making him my friend. And he is a great dude.
Yeah, I 100% agree. When going back when we had him on the show, like, I got so many messages from people just, love Don. God, that's awesome. You were able to finally get him on the show. Like, and they all had a story. Like, they all had a positive story. Like, I was here and, this is how Don influenced this particular thing for me, or influenced me directly, or I would have never done this if it hadn't been for Don or whatever else. Again, it goes back to the empowering people.
Absolutely.
To do stuff. And I think it just speaks to all the things we've been talking about, and just like the dudes you were around, when you grew up, how do you wind up there? You got to be a good person, right? I think this shit doesn't just happen. I don't think it just happens. I think things happen for a reason, for a lot of reasons, whether, we're talking about faith, or we're talking about the moon, sun, and stars lining up. But it really does come down to the good people, looking out for good people, which is exactly how I got in this chair. And even here, when Sam or Don calls you up and says, hey, dude, we're doing this thing, you want to come? Like, I've had to say no. Yeah, I've had to say no. Like the Night Ops Summit thing. Like, I would.
Oh man, you gotta come. You gotta come, Scott. You gotta come, Scott. You're gonna be missing out.
I know. I have. I've missed out a couple times now and it's just the night vision game is just something I haven't gotten into. So I'm like, well, if there's a place I got to go to do this, like, I got to do it with these guys.
Coming up gigging this year.
I know. So, but going back, like the hospitality, just the care. That I see this group just in general. This includes you, the care, the friendliness, just but also the professionalism, and what you guys are bringing to the table. I think is really special. So if you're doing that and going out into the world with your own company and working, and that can rub off on other people, man. Like, I wish you the best of luck with this, because
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I think we need more dudes out there doing that, and I think to set an example and also show that it can be done maybe in a little bit of a different way. And then going back to, you brought Mark, like you have an interesting background, and I think you can use that, right, to not ride on it, but for context, or for as an advantage to help communicate or connect with somebody, particularly like with the law enforcement game. It's really tough if you're not in law enforcement or haven't been in law enforcement.
Unfortunately, most law enforcement officers don't want to listen to anybody unless you've been a cop.
Yep.
So maybe I can break through a little bit of that.
Yeah, I hope so.
We'll see.
I hope so.
We'll see.
Man, sounds like there's a lot of exciting stuff in store for you, and you don't even know what it is yet.
We're gonna see. We're gonna see where this goes.
I love it.
I'm willing to explore opportunities and see what happens.
Well, I'm anxious to watch it happen. So I got a couple of questions about that.
Okay.
One would be like, so is this so new that do we have an Instagram? Do we have some more social media?
So I have Instagram. I have Facebook. It's all under Contingency Tactical.
Okay. That's where they find you.
I've got a little fledgling little bit of YouTube, but not very much at all. Okay. So I feel like an old FUD. I'm 50 years old, so I'm having to learn the social media game. And I'm not a businessman by trade, so I'm having to learn all of this from the bottom up. So I'm my own webmaster. I'm running my own web page. I'm running my own everything. So I'm having to learn it all.
Get after it, man. That's awesome.
So it's the learning curve is steep.
Sharp. Yep.
But I'm trying to pick it up. So
good for you. Okay.
We'll see where it goes.
So Contingency Tactical on the socials, what's the website?
Contingencytactical.com.
Okay, got it. All right.
Yeah.
So that's where people can go find you.
Absolutely.
And will they find like a schedule of classes or things?
There is.
And where are you going to be?
So I'm doing a ladies only event in June 22nd, 23rd down in Lake Martin, Alabama.
Okay.
Check out this title. It's courtesy of a good friend of mine named Mandy Southworth. It's Bullets and Botox.
Okay, I don't know.
So this was hatched one evening around her table. She wanted to have an all ladies women's class, a pistol class, and her husband goes, "Well, you ought to do it like a Botox party." And she goes, "Well, maybe I just want to have both." So it was born. So we're doing that down in Lake Martin, Alabama, the 22nd, 23rd of June.
Okay.
So we're actually having a wine tasting and some other stuff happening.
Sounds like a cool experience for the ladies.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want to treat it more like a retreat. I know sometimes the ladies are a little uncomfortable getting outside their comfort zone to come do some pistol stuff. So I want to offer them something that they may be more comfortable doing. So come drink some wine, eat some food, hang out with your girlfriends, and we'll do some shooting too. So it's a 2-day class.
Smart.
And then, then I'm doing some more stuff with Don, and we're doing some private training down in Dilley, Texas, and then we're also doing a shoot house class up in Wiggins, Colorado, in July. And then, of course, the schedule keeps evolving. So
okay, so we can get some. So outside of this, and the shooting here is like kind of the bonus.
Right.
It's kind of the bonus.
It's a helicopter thing where you do some shooting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You throw some shooting in there with it,
That's
which is it's sort of minimal on the ground, and there's obviously only 2 guys in the air doing that at a time. So I got the opportunity to train with you, but man, I would love to come out and next time you're on the firing line and training people up, I'd love to come down and support and see you.
We're trying to get something going out on the West Coast. So if I get out there, I'll give you a ring.
Please do.
And get you over there.
That is the real challenge. It's unfortunate. I love these guys, but I have so many friends here now that it's a trip. It's hard getting out here. And
I understand.
I know it's hard going the other way and setting things up. I've tried with, like Dawn reached out to me and we were trying to get some stuff going in NorCal. It's just, there's so much, it's very limited. So
we actually have a pretty good size of friends, not only clients, but friends. And that's one thing that's like pretty cool about this industry too, is like, we'll go to a class and I keep seeing the same people. And like, after a couple times, like I know these dudes, like we hang out, we eat, just like last night, shoot, how late were we just hanging out and
too late
and eating and smoking cigars and drinking a little bourbon and telling stories, like
it's awesome.
But it's that tribe mentality, right? So we all hang out together, but we're looking at possibly doing some stuff out in Vegas. So that's a little bit closer for you.
Way closer.
So,
way easier. Not that this is hard. It's just it's the time.
Across the country, bro.
It's the time. Yeah, I lose 2 days. One coming, one going, and all that stuff. But man, I feel so fortunate to have had this opportunity to meet you and be and work with you just this weekend, and then. Man, thanks so much for taking time out of today. I know it's been a long couple days. You guys were charging hard, setting up targets out there super early this morning, trudging through the swamp and whatever else to get out there. So, I'm just super stoked to have had the opportunity to sit down. So thank you for giving me your time and telling me a little bit more about you and sharing your story, man.
Hey, it's great to meet you, Scott. I hope I look forward to the next time we get to sit down.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do that sooner or later. Thanks, John.
Hey, appreciate it, brother.